I wanted to do a quick run-through video of what the flipped classroom was. I know that there were a lot of people that were sort of interested in it, but didn't have a chance to come to the 30-minute Thursday. So what I thought I'd do is, and it fits well with the flipped classroom, is I'm going to give a short little video synopsis of what it is, and then maybe in the future week or two, we'll have some time to meet after school or somehow to answer some questions you might have. I'm going to try to go as fast as I can. Keep in mind that it took me about 30 minutes or 45 minutes to present this originally, so if I don't get it all in, I'm going to try to shorten it up to about 15 minutes or so. So anyway, what's the idea behind the flipped classroom? You see the title there, and I'm just going to jump right in. We're going to talk about what it is. Essentially, to know what a flipped classroom is, you kind of have to know what a regular classroom is. And I apologize for the sort of shady video quality of this a little bit, but essentially the way it works is that in a traditional classroom, the teacher's standing up front, lecturing. There's some reading and questions, usually for homework. They're due the next day. The kids are kind of sitting in rows. All of that's sort of the normal traditional classroom model. Might not be that every teacher's classroom, but that's kind of the norm. In the flipped classroom, so here's the difference. In the flipped classroom, you'll notice right here, and it's kind of hard to read here, but it says, watch the lecture online tonight. And that during class, there's either activities going on or the kids are working in groups and the teacher is going around the room to help out the students with their work. And so you see here that we've sort of gone from the old idea of the sage on the stage to what's I guess also poetically called the guide on the side, meaning that I'm there with the students actually helping them out. So, of course, the question, I think with any pedagogical model that comes up is, why would you bother to do this? And there's lots of reasons I think that everyone has, and if you look at flipped classrooms online, there's a lot of different ways and reasons why people would do this. For me, it essentially comes down to this. I teach chemistry, and it's very problem-based, and so I used to give homework, and the students would go home and do their homework. They come in the next day and ask, I would ask questions, say, did anybody have any questions? And I'd get questions like, yes, number 1, or number 2, or, something that showed that they just weren't getting very far. And what happens a lot of times is the students get stuck on a problem and they give up. So that's reason number 1. The second reason is because I can give the direct instruction anywhere, meaning the lecture sort of content where you're just sort of going over the terminology and the concepts and all that. That can be given anywhere at basically any time, and it's at the discretion of the students, which makes for a lot more choice and a lot more empowerment for the students. So what happens? So essentially the classroom flip, basically, this is sort of a quick little flow chart that I grabbed from the infographic about this, that we're using technology and we're doing learning through activity, and this is what's going on in the classroom, and I'll get back to that in a little bit. And all of that makes the learning environment a lot different. And what does that mean? For me, basically, it means that the learning environment is much more student-centered. It's about the kids. It's not about me being up on stage, about me showing off my knowledge, but it's about the students actively participating and getting their own and learning responsibility for acquiring their own learning with my assistance. So how does it work essentially? So in my class, this is the way it works. Now this works differently for lots of different teachers. There are lots of different models out there. There is no one flipped classroom. So I'm going to just present the model that I use. And I think this may change next year for me. But currently the way it works is that all of my lectures, I record videos, much like what I'm doing right here, for the students to watch. The videos are typically about 8 to 10 minutes in length. Sometimes a little bit longer. I try not to make anything over 15 minutes long. They watch that, they take their notes, they can pause, they can rewind, they can fast forward, I guess, if they wanted to. They can go back over problems, they can go back over things that they need to see. And then when they come into class the next day, we answer questions. So the students write down questions as they're going through the lecture, much like in class they might raise their hand. They'll write down a question, and so then as class begins, they ask about it. And then the rest of the class period is spent doing one of these two things right here. Either we're practicing, so like if we're on a math-heavy chapter where they really have to work problems out, those are problems that would typically get assigned as homework and they would work at home, but now what happens is that the students do them in class. And the beauty of that, of course, is that I'm there all the time and I can help them out. The other thing is it opens up a ton of time for other activities, particularly in science for me, inquiry activities. So we're doing inquiry type labs, or at least activities in the classroom. We're doing lots of demos, lighting stuff on fire and all that kind of fun stuff. and for some group projects. I think that this model suits itself particularly well to things like project-based learning and things that we're trying to implement next year, maybe even for things like design thinking. So what are the benefits? Well, here's some of the benefits, and these are by no means like the biggest benefits. These are just the ones that I sort of considered to be like the most important, or I'm sorry, the initial benefits. So we'll talk about the more important ones here in a second. First off, students don't get frustrated. They get stuck. They're on problem number one, problem number two. They don't know what to do. There's always someone around. The first thing they usually go to are their peers, the people around them. One of the things I found that's really great is that the students do work to help each other. But barring that, I'm there. There's a teacher there to sit down next to them, and I literally do that. I sit down next to them or sit down right across the table from them and help them work through stuff. I get so much more one-to-one time, and we'll come back to that again a little bit. Another great one, and this is a reason why I think that everybody should do videos even if they're not going to flip their classroom, is because students that are out don't miss out on as much. How many times have you had a student come to you after they've been out for 2-3 days and say, what did you do? Did you do anything yesterday while I was out? And you're like, no, of course not. We stopped class. I mean, no, I mean, of course there was lots of stuff that went on. And then they want you to reteach it. And of course there's no way really you can condense, into 5 minutes like they want, an hour long or a 50-minute long lesson. So you've got it right there. When my students come in and say, hey, what did we go over? I say, hey, we went over Vodcast 5.5. On shorthand electron configurations. You need to go over that and then ask me some questions once you've watched that and got a little bit caught up, at least on the note part of it. And as I said before, a lot more time opened up for activities, labs, demos. I can't even tell you how much more time I have because I've basically cut 45 to 50 minutes of lecture a day down to 15 minutes that actually doesn't usually occur in the classroom. So I've gained almost half of my class time every day in a block class. To add on activities and practice and labs and demos and just general fun stuff that I would have never got to do, and that I haven't got to do for the past 11 years of traditional model teaching. These are the biggest benefits, and I think these are the ones that, particularly for a lot of teachers and for administration, is what they really want to see, and I think this is where we're headed in education nowadays, is that first off, differentiation is much easier. And what I mean by that is that I don't actually actively have to plan like a different lesson or a different worksheet for students. I get time to sit down individually with students and see where they're at and maybe say, hey, you can skip these 2 problems. You've got a handle on this. Maybe you need to work a couple of more. Maybe you're getting frustrated by the volume of work, so you can work this amount. You're not getting this, so let's work on this thing first. I can differentiate individually with each student. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And the classroom is about the students. The students are responsible for their own learning. And I will say, and I know this sounds hard to believe a lot of times, but the students really have done a pretty good job of buying in on that. It's not that I'm up there throwing information at them and I have to be an amazing lecturer, which honestly, I mean, I like to think that I was a pretty good lecturer. But it becomes about there's knowledge there that I'm helping them to acquire, and they are responsible for getting it. Okay, they have to play a much more active role in the learning. They have to make sure that they watch the videos. They have to work on the stuff in class. I don't let up on them. I sit down next to them and say, hey, what can I help you with if they're not working on something? They don't have the option of not doing a particular assignment. And this, I like to say, is my my classroom motto. And I stole this from Sams and Bergman, the guys that originated this idea. But this is my mantra every day this year: is every student every day. I want to speak individually with every student every day. And really, I've been pretty good about that. I can sit down next to almost every student in my classes and see where they are individually and help them out and focus them on the next task, or encourage them to move on, encourage them to redo something, all of those things. I get to speak to every student every day. And just to point out a couple of things here, this is what's going on in class. This is spontaneous. This was not me pushing the students into this. They grouped themselves this way. You see that the 2 girls in the back, they're actually watching one of the podcasts in class on the iPad. The other students are practicing. And of course, I'm walking around the room, in this case taking pictures, but I'm walking around the room helping out the students. So that's sort of the big deal. That's just the essential gist of the flip class, is that I just get so much more time with every student. that I would have never got. Even when I had smaller classes, I still feel like I'm much more able to get more time with each student. So let me run through some frequently asked questions, some questions that get asked all the time. First off, how do you make the videos? The way I'm making the video right now is a program called Camtasia Studio. There's a ton of free stuff out there. Cam Studio, Screener, Screencast-O-Matic, those are all free. I didn't choose them because I like to have complete control over my videos. I don't want them to get uploaded somewhere else, and I want to make sure I can get the format that I want in them and that I can edit them and all that. So that's why I use Camtasia. But you can definitely, for free, use any of this other stuff. Explain Everything, Replay Note, these are iPad apps that make it real easy to screen capture, so you can write on the screen and talk and go through web browsers and pull up pictures and all that stuff, just like I'm doing here, and show all of those things. And I think those are great programs as well, especially Explain Everything. My kids use it all the time in class. How do I make sure they watch the video? So I've had two answers for this. The short answer is that I don't. I really don't check up on them day to day. That's part of their responsibility thing. I don't ride their case about the videos, but what I do say is that if they, they call me over to help and I can tell that they don't know anything, this is me assessing them, sitting down next to them, as they ask questions, I can tell. And if they haven't watched the video, I say, you need to watch it. And if they haven't, I pull out an iPad and I hand it to them, and have them work on it. Sometimes I do check. Once in a while I'll have a Google form or something like that. They may have to come in with a question. I've thought about checking notes and stuff like that, but really I want to make it about the students and their responsibility, so I don't really check every day. That's up to them. Isn't this the same as lecturing, as regular old direct instruction that we're really not supposed to do? Shouldn't it be more student-centered? There is some of that. That's definitely true. I mean, it's a lecture, but I've taken a 45-minute lecture and I've condensed it down to, the essential points, and into a 15-minute chunk, and so it's much shorter. And here's the big part. The student is in control of the lecture. The student can pause it. They can fast forward. They can go back and rewind. They can watch it more than once the same way, that they can never do in a traditional lecture. So I think while it is still lecturing, still typical direct instruction, I think it's much better for these reasons. What about the students who don't have internet access? This is kind of a big deal. Particularly given the school that I'm at now, a lot of students don't have internet access. At the beginning of the year, as part of their syllabus, I have them check off, do you have internet access, do you have a computer, do you have a DVD player, those three things. So here's what works. If they don't have internet access, and I didn't mention this before, but I put the videos on the school website and I put them on YouTube for them to access. So I have students that bring in jump drives. I can jump all of the semester's files onto a jump drive as long as they have about 2 gigs of space. If not, I can jump units at a time onto them. I've had some students bring their laptops in. I've copied everything onto their laptop for them. But the biggest part too is that if they don't have any real computer access, I burn DVDs of each unit, and then graciously, Mr. Gibbons at the school, our TV teacher, he burns me 10 to 15 copies of them, and I number them and I check them out to students. Then and they bring them back when they're done with that unit. So essentially, every student has a DVD player. I haven't had a student yet that hasn't had that capability. And on the rare occasions where I do have some cases where maybe not just for access, but they just don't have time to watch them, I let them watch them at school. It's usually the first thing. I'm like, we're going to talk about this thing, we're going to review. If you haven't done this, grab an iPad, start watching it. In a lot of cases, the kids are really good. They'll have an iPad in their hand even before the class starts sometimes. And again, this isn't like I have a ton of iPads. I have a science department iPad, and I bring my personal iPad in when I can, and they use those two things. A lot of students use their phones as well to watch them. What does a day in a flip class look like? I really wish I could show you. If you Google online, Learning for Mastery, Sams and Bergman, I know Aaron Sams has this great video up, like a day in his, or a class period condensed down to a minute, and he just looks like he's running around, as I say here, like a chicken with his head cut off. That is exactly what it looks like. It's pretty chaotic sometimes. It is occasionally pretty loud, especially in my class of like 28, 30 kids. But there's a lot of learning going on. There's learning going on in different ways. I'm in the corner direct instructioning, helping out some kids that had some problems with the videos, 5 or 6 of them. There's other groups around. There's some kids taking assessments. There might be a couple of kids watching videos on the iPads, sharing some headphones with each other. The next question, of course, is what am I doing? Am I like sitting at my desk like, sweet, I gave him the video, I can relax now? Actually, I work way harder on both ends, prepping and in class every day for the flip class. because I'm moving around the whole time. But I tell you what, I feel a lot better about it because I know what my students are doing at all times. There's never a question. You can give an assessment like a FIST to 5 and ask a student what they understand, but how do you know that that's actually accurate? Whereas I can sit down next to them and watch them work through stuff and ask them questions as they do it, so I know exactly what's going on. So where can you find out more about this? I definitely want to recommend these websites. If you go to vodcasting.ning.com, that is the Flip Classroom Network, 3,600 teachers or something like that on there. Tons of information. I highly recommend it. You can also go to, if you go to MAST, which is like sort of a STEM thing at the University of, I think, Northern Colorado. They have a whole thing on vodcasting. They host a lot of stuff. And for me personally, one of the things that I would recommend most is if you're on Twitter, follow hashtag FlipClass, ton of stuff. We just had our first sort of national FlipClass chat on Monday where we had just a ton of people in there. I think within that hour there was something like 900 tweets. And it was full of information and people helping each other out. Some of the best professional development I've had in a long time. So I hope this helped anyone out. And then of course you can always stop by and see me, shoot me an email, and hopefully we'll find some time to get together and discuss some more questions about this. It's a really great idea. I don't know that it's right for everybody. I don't think that anything in education is a silver bullet for everyone. But it's definitely something I think that's worth considering, and I can say that I love it, and I don't think I'll ever go back to traditional teaching.